First of all, I want to say Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. We think about Father's Day, it can be bittersweet a lot of times. Sometimes some of us, we've lost fathers or stepfathers or father-in-laws, but they're never really gone. They're the ones that makes us who we are. They're the ones that leads us and teaches us what it means in this life. And that's what we should do. A lot of times we look at father as one that gives birth. But too often, especially in today's society, we'll find that it's not just someone that plants a seed that's a father. But it's the one that gives growth. It's the one that comes underneath. It's the one that leads and devotes that love and kindness and teaches, instructs, discipline. There's many different forms of fathers. One is a biological father, the ones that we know, the one there from the birth. Then you have the stepfathers, the ones that's chosen to take part. You have the adoptive fathers. That's like, I want to be to bring you in and give you this love, to share my life with you for the rest of your life, walk beside you. Then you have the spiritual fathers. And as believers, we're supposed to be spiritual fathers. What a spiritual father is taking the ones underneath you of the faith or of it, whatever, and teaching them so that if anything was to happen to you, the children could step back in, step on up and take over and never miss a lick. Because in the spiritual realm of things, this is not our faith. This is not our religion. This is not our words or our scripture, but it comes from one above, and we are his children. We are his messengers to pass on to the children under us. And he teaches, especially in Timothy and Titus, we see how he instructs what the pastor should be inside the home. That should be in every home. And what it is learning on a small scale how to treat people and how to honor things and honor him and his directive on a bigger scale, which is remembering who we are. We are his children, and we're supposed to follow his example by coming under them and raising them. Now, I like to go a little bit further than that. God gives us the primary example of true love in the Garden of Eden by putting the tree of knowledge in there. That's a little hard to believe at times, though, ain't it? Because we know from the tree of knowledge became all the evil, all the knowledge and everything. However, true love is not making someone do what you want. True love is not forcing them and only loving them if they do what you want. But true love is loving them regardless of what they choose to do with their life. Allowing them to make their own choices. Allowing them to either be part of you or not. And that's what he was doing. Whenever he put the tree in there, he knew that we're going to fail a lot of times. He knew that we're going to give in to temptations of this life. He knew we're going to fall by the wayside. I believe nowadays we call that adolescence, but we've all went through it. But sooner or later, we have to make a choice on who we are, if we're going to live for him or not. But he loved us enough to give us that choice. He also loves us enough not to force us to come back home to him if we reject him and don't want to be with him. Just like the prodigal son in Luke chapter 15. However, just like what would be like a disregarded act for an older man to be running towards the youth when it should be the other way around, he is willing to run to us if he sees us turn back and take the first step back to him. He's willing to run to us and just embrace us and pick us back up no matter what pigsty we've put ourselves in, and tell us that he still loves us. That's the example he gave us. That's the example all through the Bible that he gave us. He even sent his own son to die for us, just to make a way, not to force us back into his grace, not to force us back into his home, but to say, I've made a way and paid a price for you, and that's how much you are worth to me. Because a lot of times we look down on ourselves, especially with anxiety and depression and everything else that goes on today. And this world is created in such a way where it breeds this kind of mental disease, pretty much, to kill us mentally. And it's hard for people to see that they have self-worth in a world that's bred in that way. But you can go in the store and see how much something is worth by the cost of it, right? You go and you look at, well, this has this name brand, and they have a good reputation. They have to uphold by it, and it costs us a little bit more. But you have this generic one over here. It doesn't have as good reviews, but I can get that for like $1. Let me get that. And it breaks, right out the door. But you get something that's worth quite a bit more, and it comes with a warranty. You can always return it back. You know, it's worth more. Got a lot more value. He puts the value on each and every one of us, no matter who we are or where we come from, so high that it was worth him sending his son to die on a cross for us. That's how much value each of us has in his eyes. And that's the value of a father, a true father. I'd like to read over in Ephesians chapter 6. I learned a little bit this morning when I was reading that I never saw before. And it got a little dark. But I do believe that in the darkest of night, you take a candle out outside and it shines the brightest. But when the moon is the brightest and you take that exact same candle out and light it, it doesn't put off much light. Still the same light, it just isn't seen as much. So I want to show what Paul is saying here. The children and fathers. And then show you just how dark it was at this time. So you can see just how bright his writing really is. Ephesians chapter 6. It says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, that it may be well with you, and that you may live long on the earth. And fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Now, in today's society, it's hard to tell anybody to submit or to obey anyone else, right? I mean, it's like some things you don't want to say. It's like, oh, you just offended somebody because you told them to be in subjection to someone. Oh, you just offended them because you told them to obey someone. However, we all have to have discipline. We all have to have some kind of boundaries, or else we're all going to wind up in the ditch sooner or later. If you have no boundaries and no discipline, no directive of what way you're supposed to walk, then you will, in fact, have chaos. Look around. We all have structure. We all have laws and regulations and rules. Government has the exact same ones that saying, don't put this on people, you're offending them, or the exact same ones that saying, but you will do this, this, or this, or this, if you want to stay here. Can't have both. You're either going to have rules, regulations, a guideline, or you're going to have chaos. You can have rules and regulations without saying that one is greater than the other. Paul is writing this in the Ephesians, right? Or to the Ephesians. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And he brings back up one of the 10 Commandments, the only one that has a condition behind it. Honor your father and mother so your life will be longer. But what you don't realize is at this time, how dark it was in the Roman culture. They had this law called Petri Potestas. Yeah, I had to look at that one. I'm still not sure I got that one right. But Petri Potestas, it's a Roman ordinance where whenever a child is born, they would come and bring that child and lay it on the ground in front of the father's feet. The father, if he acknowledges the child, will reach down and pick the child up. That is acknowledging that he is accepting the child and is acknowledging it. There is an alternative. He turns and walks away. That says that he is not acknowledging the child, and they'll take the child and throw it out. That's how dark it got. The population started decreasing to the point of they had to write an amendment to that clause. So if you throw it out, throw a child out, then you must take it to the Roman Forum over here, where someone that does not have a child or someone who wants a child can come by and take it up. So a lot of people saw that as a way of getting more income. So they would go over there at night and take the child, raise it until it became an age so they could sell it into slavery, or they could raise it to work in the fields or for the government. You did have some that wanted children or some that was trying to get them. And this right here is what's happening in the Roman Empire age when Paul is writing to them. There's also another clause of this. On top of doing that, this clause that Petri Potestas, it says that the father has authority over the child no matter what age. You can have him put to death, or you give him a good life. He can put him in the field to work in the fields. He can put him in chains and make him work in the chains. No matter if they became governors in the Roman society, or the priests, as we find in whenever they went and seized Jesus, if you notice, over in Luke, how they took it to the stepfather or the father-in-law before they went to the actual priest. The father-in-law was the priest before him. However, he wasn't at that time. But that was still the father-in-law. They took him to him before they took it to the son. Because in that society, you always had the father that had the word, and the children were supposed to obey the fathers. This is how dark it was at that time. In that mindset, can you see any father trying to restrain themselves? If they get angry, they just let it out. Who do they have to answer to except for their own father? So, yes, children, obey your fathers. This is right here, the first thing you're taught from your birth. It's not so much the Ten Commandments no more, but it's, hey, if you want to survive, know that they're in charge of you, and so you will live longer and be more pleasurable in this life. Obey them, listen to their instructions, right? It goes way beyond a spiritual realm. This is just survival now. But then he does something that wasn't taught in the Roman time. He switches it over to the fathers. And that's where he turns and says, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in discipline and instructions of the Lord. If I'm in charge of whether they live or die, why should I worry about if they get angry or not? But yet he was bringing them back to look at how God instructed us. Look at God's example. It wasn't to be a tyrant on top of someone. It was not ever to say that what you want is more better than theirs. Your life is more better than theirs. It was never supposed to be like that. It was always supposed to be equality. And the fathers bringing them up, leading them by example. Just like what Jesus did when he came down with his disciples. He went in there and washed the feet If we go back to chapter 5 of Ephesians, we find how he says in 23, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ also is the head of the church, he himself being the Savior of the body. But as the church is subject to Christ, so also the wives ought to be subject to the husbands and everything. But then he keeps on going. He doesn't stop there. It says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word. It's also talking about the whole entire family there, how you come underneath them. See, he kept on saying, as Christ. As Christ. Because this right here, I just now gave you the mindset of what the father's role was in the Roman culture. And what he's saying is, Christ did not come down this earth and said, I am the Son of God. I am the head of the church. You will obey me. You will bow down to me. You will do this. He never did that. He did not lord it over anyone as a tyrant. But if the husband or the father is to be as Christ, then we are to come under the family just like Christ did. We're supposed to put aside, if we want to go playing golf or a fishing trip with the buddies or whatever, or putting money set aside for something that we want, but we see that family is struggling in this other area and they need us. The children are starving for attention and they need that time with us. Put aside going out there with the buddies and come under and spend the time with the family to let them know that they're loved. Let them know that you care about them, to pick them up. Take that money and put it on what the family needs to continue to grow. We are to come underneath them and sacrifice some of ourselves for the benefit of them. Christ never becomes the head of an individual until their eyes are open to exactly what he has done for them. And then they go over and they kneel down and they realize it and say, Lord, I see what you've done for me. Be my Lord. Forgive me and be my Lord. At that moment, and only at that moment, does he become the head. But it first came with him serving and picking up the church. Same thing goes for the fathers. If we're supposed to be the head as Christ, then that is not something that's just given to us. It is not something that's just labeled on us as a title. But it's something that is earned by coming underneath the family and the wife and the children, seeing the father that every single thing he does is for their benefit. So why wouldn't you go to them? Why wouldn't you lean to them? Being a head is not something up here to lord over people. But being a head is someone down here that is carrying you. So that's when you turn around and say, I see you. I acknowledge you. I know that your decisions and your choices is going to benefit me for the fullest, for the best outcome. I may not like what you say, but I'm going to honor you because I know you're looking out for my best interests. And that's what we do when we turn to Christ. We honor him because we know that we may not like walking that straight path at times. It may cause us to have to give up some of the things that we like to do. But we know in the end, it's going to lead for our benefit, the best outcome. But God loves us enough to give us that choice. He loves us enough, no matter whether we do everything that he said in the laws, or if we do nothing of the laws, he still loves us the same. If we mess up, he still loves us and is right there. Where all we got to do is say, forgive me, help me, pick me back up. I messed up again. I got to do that all the time, y'all. I don't care how many degrees someone has or where they go, we're still human. And it's still going to be that time when we have to turn over to him and say, hey, take me, love me, forgive me, bring me out of this mess that I got myself in once again. Doesn't mean we still have to go through the mud, but we have a Father right there beside us that loves us and wants to be with us and wants to take away the pain as much as possible and put us onto a better path. And that's what He instructs us to do. Whether it's a child by blood, a child by adoption, by marriage, a child by our professional position, or by our spiritual position. It is to come under them and lead them, sometimes with discipline, sometimes with instruction, always by example, and absolutely always through love. Because we find they also wrote out what love is in 1 Corinthians. It's patient, it's kind, it's forgiving, long-suffering. It's not overbearing. It's not, oh, I'm only going to love you if you do this for me. But it's unconditional. Long-suffering. That's what love is. That's what He teaches us it is. And I praise Him for that. He said the exact same thing over in Colossians chapter 3. It says that same thing, just worded a little bit different. In 20 and 21, it says, "Children, be obedient to your parents in all things, for this is well-pleasing to the Lord." But then for the fathers, it says, "Fathers, do not exasperate your children," or make them, keep on pushing on them until, to the angry point. It says, "that they may not lose heart." You see a person in the Jewish custom, they would teach in small increments, different teachings. They would not dwell on the same teaching for long because they know that people have a tendency to tune them out. It's like, yeah, I know where he's going. I got this. But if they only touch on it, and then they go over and touch on something else, and then they touch on something else, well, now it's like, what's he talking about? Oh, yeah. Their mind is trained to, I have to pay attention or else I'm going to miss something. He's not going to say it again. But when you look, whenever Jesus does this, the underlying message is the same. And He's put it in different ways, but He's teaching on different topics as well. So it's got multiple purposes. Same thing goes with children. Whenever we get so mad, we start trying to teach them, and we keep on saying the same thing over and over again. How many of y'all has been in a situation where that was done to you and you tuned them out? It could have been in the church setting. It could have been in the home setting. It could have been on the job. But we've all been there, where we keep hearing the exact same brief, the exact same message, exact same teaching. We're just going to tune them out. But if we tell them just enough so they know, and then move on, they have a tendency of picking it up. They may not go after it right then, but you're planting the seed. And just like He said about Paul plants, Apollos waters, but God gives the increase, or vice versa, it means that one person may plant a seed, but God is the one that does the increase in time. One thing we're here for is to train them, to teach them, to plant that seed. And pray for them. That's how we water it. And allow God to give the increase. I was looking at Father's Day and I found this saying here, and I wanted to share it with y'all. It's not really a saying. It was something that someone wrote. It says, a grown man awaiting surgery in the hospital was talking with his father. Said, "Dad," he said, "I sure hope I can be home for Father's Day. I felt awful years ago when I was 10 because I never gave you a gift that year." The father replied, "Mark, I remember that Saturday before Father's Day. I saw you in the store. I watched as you picked up the cigars and stuffed them in your pocket. I knew that you did not have any money. And I was sad because I thought that you were going to run out of the store without paying. But as soon as you hid the cigars, you pulled them out and put them back. When you stayed out playing all the next day because you had no present, you probably thought that I was hurt. You're wrong. When you put the cigars back and decided not to break the law, Mark, you gave me the best present I ever received. Going through adolescence, I remember not having any money. It's easy for our children and for us even, for life to come on us where we don't have the things to buy gifts. The best presents in the world is never a material thing that can be gone in a heartbeat. Whether you sit down and eat and then it's gone, or a fire comes and destroys it and it's gone. But the best and the brightest gifts possible is seeing that what you have taught your children, what you have taken the time and instilled in your children, is still there. That is the best gifts at all, the good gifts that never dies. They last way beyond our own self. Randy Travis sung the song, Three Wooden Crosses. I believe our SO knows that pretty good. He does a pretty good job to get him to do it sometime. But in that verse, it says it's not what you take with you, what you leave behind when you go. And that's what being a father is all about. It's not about accumulating things, but it's about inspiring things. It's about building up, about training. Proverbs says, 22:6 says, train up a child in the way he should go. When he is old, he will not depart from it. That is not a guarantee. But it's roundabout. If you put it in there, they're going to have that. It's still their choice. But most of the time, it's still going to be there for them to find their way back. If we want to touch on the psychological side, on science, it supports this. Infant side is where the back of your little cushion, left like a sponge part of your brain is. From the time you're born till around 2.5, 3.5, that's whenever that's being getting mature. That is fundamentals. What hands are, what crying is, what gets food, basic survival. That you not really the memory. Well, as soon as that gets mature, the middle section, like right in here, starts to develop. That goes from around 3.5. Until puberty. During this stage, scientists have seen where everything is maturing to how society works. They are drawing everything in from within the house. If you have a father and mother in there, if you have grandparents in there, if you have a divorced family in there, if you have one in prison, and one home, whatever it may be. Or in some cases I've seen where you only have one parent and they were addicted to drugs or something. Whatever's going on inside the home during that time frame is what's being instilled inside that child, what normal is in this world. So they see like, well, this is normal in society. This is normal in what's going on. And then from puberty to about 24, 25, insurance companies know this, that's why it's the highest, is when the front part right here, the frontal lobe, is behavioral module. That's when that's getting mature. They've already looked inside the home, So now they're looking at their friends. They're looking at the ones they want to hang out with. They're looking at the ones on TV or the ones they're listening to on the radio. The lyrics behind it. That's why it's so important there. They're trying to figure out who they are with society and this world in regard to who they were at coming up in the home. But they don't want to look at the home no more because they already know all that. So that's the reason when we train up a child in the way they should walk, because that's the foundation. So whenever they get older, whenever they finally figure out who they are in this world, they have that to stand on still. So science has, once again, proved the Bible to be accurate. Self-worth. God made all of us equal. He's the one we all answer to. He is our ultimate Father. Our life is lent to us but will be paid back at the time that we die. And then we answer for how we spent it, just like money. Whatever position He has installed in us, let's do it with honor so we can stand upright before Him whenever we come to answer for that time. More than that, let's stand upright so we can see the fruit being multiplied in our children, whether it's by birth, by blood, on the job, or in the faith. As fathers, that's our job. That's our legacy. May God bless.